Today we are making homemade English muffins. These are super light and fluffy, perfect for your breakfast or your brunch, for your egg breakfast sandwiches. Skip the store-bought stuff with this super easy homemade from scratch English muffin recipe. So let's get into it. So for this recipe, you're going to need a few ingredients. You're going to need 2 teaspoons of yeast, 2 tablespoons of white refined sugar, 1 cup of milk, 1 tablespoon of Greek yogurt or sour cream, a 1/4 cup of water, 1 1/4 cup of bread flour, along with 1 1/2 cups of just regular all-purpose flour, 3 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 egg, and a 1/4 cup of cornmeal. Now, once you've gathered all of your ingredients, you can start making these English muffins. The first thing you want to do is grab your milk and warm it up in the microwave for 30 to 40 seconds, along with your water, until it's the temperature of a nice warm bath. Once your milk is nice and warm, you're going to add in your sugar, your tablespoon of yogurt or sour cream, along with your instant yeast. And you're just going to give this a nice stir so that it's all nice and well combined together. And you're going to set this aside for about 10 minutes or until the mixture becomes nice and frothy and you know that the yeast has become activated. Now, while the yeast is activating, you can mix your dry ingredients together. So grabbing your bread flour and your all-purpose flour and just mixing those together, getting them well and combined. And you can set this aside until your yeast has been activated. Now, once the yeast mixture is activated, it'll look a little bit something like this. So nice and frothy and bubbly at the top. And once that's done, you can go ahead and add in your egg to this yeast mixture. And you're just going to mix this together until it's nice and well combined. And once it's nice and well combined, you can go ahead and grab your dry ingredients, so your flours, and you're just going to go ahead and pour in your yeast mixture into your flour, along with your 3 tablespoons of melted butter. And you want to go ahead and knead this for about 10 minutes. You do want to start off slow just to make sure that the flour doesn't fly everywhere as it's mixing together. And then you can go ahead and increase the speed to about medium-high for the remaining of the time. And once the dough is done kneading, you'll see that it'll have a kind of elastic and smooth texture, which we'll see in a minute here. So you can see here the dough is coming together, but it's not quite done yet. There was still some clumps in the dough. You really want to make sure that it is a smooth texture and it's well combined and kneaded together. So here you can see the texture is nice and elastic and smooth, and the dough is almost ready here. The dough is a little bit sticky to work with, so you just want to be careful with your fingers. You can go ahead and dab your fingers in a little bit of water or a little bit of olive oil, just so that it doesn't stick to your fingers too much. And you just want to remove the dough off of the hook gently. And you're going to cover the bowl in plastic wrap and let this dough rise in a warm place for about an hour or until it's doubled in size. Now, while the dough is having its first rise, you can prepare your pan. This is just preparing the pan for the second rise of the dough. So ideally grabbing a pan that has a deeper dish in it to allow the English muffins to rise a second time while not sticking to the plastic wrap that's going to be placed on top, placing down a piece of parchment paper and sprinkling it with the cornmeal. And you can set that aside until the English muffins are formed. Now here we have our English muffin dough that has risen, it's doubled in size, and it's ready to be rolled out. So you're going to lightly flour a rolling surface and just go ahead and plop your dough onto this surface. Now do be gentle with it here. When you grab your rolling pin, you do want to make sure that you're not rolling these out to be too thin. So just spreading it out gently with your hands at first with a little bit of flour, making sure it's not sticking to your surface. And then grabbing your rolling pin, and you want to roll these out to about 1/2 inch thick. You can make them less thin if you would like. That's totally up to you. 1/2 inch is just the ideal size that I've found with this recipe, but it's totally up to you. And once it's rolled out, you want to cut out your English muffins. So ideally using a 3-inch cookie cutter or even using a mug, the top of a mug, and just cutting out your English muffins out of the dough. If you are rolling these out to be 1/2 inch thick, this recipe will make between 7 to 9 English muffins. So just cutting these out. And once you've cut out all of your English muffins from this first dough, you can go ahead and grab your prepared pan with the cornmeal at the bottom. The cornmeal will help the English muffins not stick to the parchment paper when they are rising. So it's pretty essential that the cornmeal is at the bottom. And you're just going to place your English muffins on top of the cornmeal and the parchment paper. Because I don't like to waste the dough, you can also use the remaining dough here and just gently kind of roll it together into one dough ball and rolling it out or pushing it down to about 1/2 inch thick like the rest of the English muffins and cutting out whatever remaining English muffins you can. They won't look as neat as your other ones, but they're just as delicious. And you can go ahead and sprinkle the top of the English muffins with some cornmeal. Now this part I forgot to get it on video, but I do like to cut the parchment paper between each of the English muffins because it helps in the baking of these English muffins. So you can see here I have cut them, each English muffin in its own individual square of parchment paper. Now this is optional, but it does make it easier when you're making them so that they don't deflate when you're putting them on the pan. And you're going to cover these in plastic wrap and let these rise for about 1/2 hour to 45 minutes or until they're doubled in size. Now once the English muffins are done their second rise, you're going to grab a large pan and place it over a low heat, usually between 2 to 3 level heat. And you want to sprinkle a little bit of cornmeal into the pan and just let the bottom of the pan warm up. This is a little bit of what they look like once the English muffins have risen for the second time. And once your pan is warmed up, you can go ahead and grab one of your English muffins. This is why it's easier to cut the parchment paper and grab them individually. And you're just going to place it on the warmed up pan. And from here, you just want to let the English muffin cook. Now, I'm not going to lie, this part of the process does take a little bit of time because we're cooking at such a low temperature. So it will take a few minutes on each side for these English muffins to be cooked. And you'll know they're ready once they get that golden, classic golden brown kind of look here on each side. Now, because it's kind of hard to know when the English muffins are cooked, I like to touch the edges of the English muffin as it's cooking, and you can kind of see it starts to harden on the sides, and that'll be an indication that it's starting to cook through. But you can also just always check to see if it has that golden brown, and that's likely going to tell you whether it has cooked on that side or not. And then once they're cooked, you just want to let these cool completely. And once they've cooled, you have a batch of deliciously homemade English muffins with those perfect and iconic golden brown sides, perfect for your next brunch or breakfast. These bakery style English muffins are perfect for any occasion. If you like this recipe, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what kind of recipes you want more of. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.